When I was 9 years old, my mother pulled her car into the Greyhound station on Richards Boulevard in Sacramento, California, handed me a $5 bill, and said, "If you're smart, you'll find your way home." I was standing on the sidewalk in a pink hoodie and jeans I'd outgrown by 2 inches, holding a backpack with one broken strap that contained a math workbook, a granola bar wrapper, and a stuffed rabbit named Senior Flop, whose left ear was held on with a safety pin. My brother, Nico, 12 years old, was in the front seat. He turned around and looked at me through the windshield and laughed. Not a nervous laugh, a real one. The laugh of a boy who'd been told the extra kid was being dropped off and thought it was funny the way 12-year-old boys think things are funny when they don't understand the permanence of what's happening. My sister, Yesenia, 10 years old, was in the back seat. She held up a silver flip phone and filmed me through the window. The red recording light was the last thing I saw before my mother's taillights replaced it, and the car pulled out of the parking lot and turned right onto Richards Boulevard and disappeared into Sacramento traffic the way cars disappear. Completely, like they were never there. Like the person standing on the sidewalk watching them leave had imagined the whole thing. I didn't imagine it. I stood on the sidewalk for 2 hours waiting for the car to come back. It didn't. Then I sat on the bench outside the station. Then I lay down on the bench. It was metal. It was March. March in Sacramento isn't cold the way other places are cold, but when you're 9 years old and lying on a metal bench at 10 p.m. in a bus station wearing a pink hoodie and no jacket, the cold finds you. It finds the spaces between your ribs and the backs of your knees, and the place at the base of your neck where your mother used to put her hand when she walked you across parking lots. Back when she walked you across parking lots, back when you were worth walking. I bought a granola bar from the vending machine, oats and honey, 75 cents. I ate it in small pieces to make it last because I didn't know when I'd eat again, and the math of the remaining $4.25 was the first piece of survival arithmetic I ever did. I picked up a bus map from the rack by the ticket counter. Free. I studied it under the station lights, trying to figure out which route went back to our apartment on Northgate Boulevard. But the lines and the numbers blurred together because I was 9, and bus maps aren't designed for children. They're designed for people who already know where they're going. I folded the map and put it in my backpack next to Senior Flop and the math workbook and lay down on the bench. I held Senior Flop against my chest and listened to the sounds of the station. Diesel engines, announcements for buses to places I'd never been, the footsteps of strangers who walked past a 9-year-old girl on a bench and didn't stop because people don't stop. That's not cruelty. That's just the math of a world where everyone is going somewhere, and a child on a bench doesn't look like an emergency. She looks like she's waiting for someone. And she was. She waited all night. Nobody came back. Not that night. Not the next morning. A Greyhound employee named Martin found me at 6 a.m. He was unlocking the front doors for the first shift. He saw me curled on the bench with Senior Flop and my broken backpack and the remaining $4.25 in coins, arranged in a neat row on the armrest, because at some point during the night I'd counted them, and counting had felt like control, and control had felt like the only thing between me and the understanding that I'd been thrown away. "Hey, sweetheart, where's your mom?" I couldn't answer, not because I didn't know the answer, because the answer was too big for a 9-year-old's mouth. The answer was, my mother drove away with my brother and my sister and left me on a sidewalk with $5 and a sentence and the red light of a flip phone camera, recording the moment she chose to keep 2 children and discard the third. Martin called CPS. I went into foster care that day. I wouldn't leave the system for 9 years. That was March 2006. I was 9. This morning, 18 years later, I woke up in my apartment in Portland, Oregon, next to my husband, in the life I built with my own hands on a foundation of nothing, and checked my phone. 41 missed calls, all from the same number, 559, area code, Fresno, California, and 1 voicemail. I pressed play. The voice that came through the speaker was the same voice that said, "If you're smart, you'll find your way home," to a child at a bus station 18 years ago, and drove away without looking back. "Marin, it's your mother. I know you probably don't want to hear from me. I know what I did. I've lived with it every day, but I'm sick, baby. I'm really sick. Stage 3 breast cancer. The doctors don't know how much time I have. I need to see you. I need to tell you what happened. I need you to forgive me before I go. Please call me back. Please, Marin. I'm your mother." My hands started shaking, not from fear, from the cellular memory of a body that spent 18 years running from a voice and just heard it in the bedroom it built to be safe. The bedroom with the husband and the bookshelf and the stuffed rabbit on the top shelf with the same safety pin ear from 2006. But the shaking wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the last line. "I'm your mother." She said it like a credential. Like motherhood is a title you keep even after you leave your youngest child at a bus station because your boyfriend didn't want 3 kids, and you chose him. She said, "I'm your mother," the way people say, "I'm a doctor," on an airplane when someone's choking, as if the title automatically means they can save you, even if they're the reason you can't breathe. Before you hear what I did with those 41 calls, what I said when I called her back, and what happened in the diner in Fresno, where I looked my mother in the face for the first time since she drove away, you need to know what that 9-year-old did with her $4.25 and her broken backpack and the 9 years that came after. Because the woman who listened to that voicemail this morning didn't come from nowhere. She came from a bench, and a system, and 4 foster homes, and one woman named Helen who replaced the 6 words my mother left me with. "If you're smart, you'll find your way home." With 7 words that saved my life. You are not what happened to you. Subscribe before I go further. Not for the algorithm, for every kid who ever slept on a bench and woke up and had to keep going because nobody was coming. I need to tell you about the system. Not the way politicians talk about it, with statistics and policy papers and the word reform repeated until it loses meaning. The way a child experiences it, from inside. CPS intake was a room with fluorescent lights and a table with toys on it that were supposed to be comforting. The way a bandage is supposed to be comforting when what you need is surgery. A social worker named Mrs. Reyes asked me questions. "Where is your mother? Where does she live? Do you have family? Do you have someone to call?" I answered everything except the first question, because the first question, "Where is your mother?" required me to say out loud that my mother had left me, and saying it out loud would make it real, and I was still, at 9 a.m. the morning after, holding on to the possibility that it wasn't real, that the car was going to pull back into the Greyhound station and my mother would step out and say it was a mistake, a misunderstanding, a test that I'd passed by being smart enough to stay where she left me. She didn't come back. Not that day. Not any day. CPS couldn't locate her for 3 weeks. When they did, she was in Bakersfield with Ray Ontiveros, the boyfriend, my brother, and my sister. She told the caseworker she couldn't handle 3 kids. She didn't contest the foster care placement. She signed the paperwork that made her daughter a ward of the state the way people sign credit card receipts, quickly, without reading the terms, ready to move on to the next thing. I was the next thing. Except I wasn't next. I was done. Foster care. 9 years. 4 placements. I'm going to tell you about each one because each one left a mark, and the marks together form the shape of the woman I am. And you can't understand why 41 missed calls from a 559 area code made my hands shake unless you understand what those 9 years did to the hands. Placement 1. The Hendersons, a house in North Highlands with 6 foster kids and not enough beds. I slept on a pull-out couch in a living room that smelled like carpet cleaner, and the particular sadness of a house that's trying to be a home and can't quite close the gap. The Hendersons were not cruel. They were overwhelmed. Mr. Henderson. Worked nights at a warehouse. Mrs. Henderson cooked meals for 8 people and did laundry for 8 people and drove 8 people to appointments, and somewhere in the machinery of all that caretaking, the individual children became interchangeable. I learned to be invisible, because invisible children don't cause problems, and children who don't cause problems don't get moved. I stayed 11 months. I was moved when they reduced their foster capacity from 6 to 4, because Mrs. Henderson's health was declining. I was one of the 2 they gave back, not because I was bad, because I was quiet. And quiet children are the easiest to return because they don't scream when you pack their bag. Placement 2. The Pratt family in Rancho Cordova. Mr. Pratt was fine. Mrs. Pratt drank. Not violently, steadily, the way a faucet drips. You don't notice it at first, then you notice it and ignore it. Then you notice it and can't ignore it because the floor is wet and someone needs to call a plumber, but nobody does, because calling a plumber means admitting the pipe is broken, and admitting the pipe is broken means dealing with the pipe, and nobody wants to deal with the pipe. Mrs. Pratt's drinking was the pipe. I lived with it for 2 years, from age 10 to 12. I was moved when a caseworker found empty bottles in the laundry room that was also my bedroom. The caseworker looked at the bottles, looked at the washing machine, looked at the twin mattress on the floor where I slept next to a shelf of detergent and bleach, and said, "This isn't acceptable." It had been acceptable for 2 years. The bottles just hadn't been visible. Placement 3. A group home in Elk Grove, 12 kids, rotating staff. The staff changed every 3 months because group home workers burn out the way matches burn, completely and quickly. This is where I learned to fight, not physically. Structurally, I learned to read my own case file. I learned to ask questions at review meetings. I learned that the system wasn't designed to save me. It was designed to contain me until I aged out. And the difference between being saved and being contained is the difference between a home and a warehouse. Both have roofs. Only one has a reason to keep you. I was 12 when I learned to advocate for myself because at 12, in a group home in Elk Grove with 11 other children and rotating staff and a case file that described me as compliant and self-sufficient, I understood that nobody was going to advocate for me. The system rewards quiet children. Quiet children don't trigger reviews. Quiet children don't generate paperwork. Quiet children age out at 18, and the system closes their file and moves on to the next quiet child. I decided to stop being quiet. Placement 4, age 14. Helen Tsai. Helen was a retired elementary school teacher who lived in Arden Arcade in a small house with a garden and a cat named Chairman Meow, and bookshelves in every room, including the bathroom, because Helen believed that any room without a book was just a room, but a room with a book was a possibility. She fostered one child at a time. "I can give everything to one or scraps to many," she told me the first day. "Scraps aren't good enough. Not for you. Not for anyone." She saw me standing in her doorway with my garbage bag of belongings, which is what foster kids carry because suitcases are for people who are going somewhere by choice, and she said, "You're angry. Good. Anger means you haven't given up. Let's put that anger somewhere useful." She taught me to study. Not the way schools teach you to study, memorize and repeat. The way a person studies when learning is their escape route. She sat with me at her kitchen table every night and went through homework, not doing it for me, not hovering, just being present the way a lighthouse is present, not chasing the boats, just showing them where the rocks aren't. She taught me to cook. Feeding yourself is the first act of independence, Marin. You've been independent since you were 9. You might as well eat well while you're at it. She taught me to apply for college. She sat with me while I wrote my application essay. The essay was about the bus station, about the $5, about the bench, about the 9 years after. She read it and said nothing for a long time, and then said, "This is going to open a door, Marin, not because it's sad, because it's true. And truth always opens doors." But the thing Helen did that changed my brain. The thing that rewired the circuit my mother had damaged with 6 words on a sidewalk in Sacramento was a sentence she said to me one night in her kitchen while I was crying about a bad grade on a history test. I was 16. I was convinced that the bad grade meant I was stupid, and being stupid meant I would fail, and failing meant I would end up back in the system, and ending up back in the system meant my mother had been right. I wasn't smart enough to find my way home. Helen put her hand on mine. She looked at me with eyes that had been looking at children for 35 years and had never once looked away from one that was hurting. And she said, "You are not what happened to you. You are what you do with what happened to you." 7 words. They landed in my chest and detonated every lie my mother had planted there. I wasn't the girl who got left at a bus station. I was the girl who survived the bus station. I wasn't the throwaway kid. I was the kid who refused to stay thrown. The difference between those 2 sentences is the difference between a life spent proving your mother right and a life spent proving her wrong. Helen gave me the second sentence, and I've been living in it ever since. I graduated high school with a 3.8 GPA. I got a scholarship to Portland State University. I moved to Oregon at 18 with 2 suitcases, $400, and Senior Flop, whose left ear was still held on with the same safety pin from 2006 because some things you don't fix, you just keep carrying them. I built a life out of a $5 bill and a bench and 9 years of strangers' houses and one woman who believed in me when the woman who should have believed in me was in Bakersfield with a boyfriend who thought 3 kids was one too many. I got a degree. I got a career. I got a husband who asked me if I ever spent the $5 and then told me I was brave. I got everything a person needs to be whole. And then, on a Tuesday morning in October, my mother called 41 times and said she was dying and needed my forgiveness. If you've ever gotten a phone call from someone who destroyed you and heard them ask you to save them, tell me what you did. Because I need to know I'm not the only one who stood in her kitchen shaking. Portland State, Bachelor of Social Work, then a Master of Social Work. I threw myself into it the way swimmers throw themselves at the water, full body, no hesitation, because the alternative to swimming was sinking, and I'd been sinking for 9 years and I was finished. I chose social work because I understood the system from the inside. I knew what foster kids need because I'd needed it. I knew what the caseworker should say because I knew what mine hadn't said. I knew that the difference between a kid who ages out and disappears and a kid who ages out and survives is usually one person. One adult, one Helen. And I wanted to be that person for someone else. I joined Bridge House, a nonprofit in Portland that works with foster youth aging out of the system. I earn $61,000 a year. I have an office with a window. On my desk, a photo of Helen, a photo of Joel, and Senior Flop, who sits on my bookshelf with his safety pin ear and his worn fur, and the specific dignity of a stuffed animal that has survived everything its owner has survived and never once complained. I met Joel Calloway at the Portland Saturday Market in 2021. He was selling handmade cutting boards from a booth that smelled like cedar and wood stain. I bought one. He asked if I needed it for cooking. I need it for the aggressive chopping I do when I'm stressed. He laughed. I came back the next Saturday, and the next, and the next. On the 4th Saturday, he said, "You either really like cutting boards or you really like talking to the guy who makes them." I said, "Both." He asked me to dinner. 3rd date. I told him the bus station story, all of it. The $5, the pink hoodie, the bench, the flip phone camera, the 9 years. Helen, everything. I told him because I'd made a rule. Anyone who wants to be in my life gets the worst story first. If they stay after that, they're real. Joel listened. He didn't interrupt. He didn't say, "I'm sorry," in the reflexive way people say it when they hear something terrible and don't know what else to offer. He listened the way wood absorbs stain, completely, permanently. Then he asked one question. "Did you ever spend the $5? I bought a granola bar and a bus map. The granola bar I ate in small pieces. On the bench. The bus map I studied under the station lights trying to find a route home. It didn't help because I didn't know where home was. Did you find it? Home? Eventually. It turned out home wasn't a place. It was a bench I survived, and a woman named Helen who gave me a real one." Joel was quiet for a long time. Then, "You were braver at 9 than most people are at 90. We married in September 2022. Small ceremony in a park in Portland. Helen flew up from Sacramento. She wore a blue dress and cried happy tears and said to Joel during the reception, "She's the strongest person I've ever known." And I taught 2nd graders for 35 years. 2nd graders are terrifying. No children yet. I'm working on it in therapy, twice a week. Processing the specific fear that lives inside a woman who was abandoned by her mother and is terrified that motherhood is a disease she carries and will pass on. My therapist, Dr. Camille Ford, says the fear itself is proof I'd be a good mother, because bad mothers don't worry about being bad mothers. They just leave their daughters at bus stations and drive to Bakersfield. I'll get there. I just need more time than most people, because most people didn't get left. October 2024, Tuesday morning. I woke up at 6:15 a.m. Joel had already left for his workshop. The apartment was quiet. coffee maker on a timer, morning light through the curtains, the specific piece of a life that's been intentionally constructed to feel safe. I checked my phone. 41 missed calls, all between 5:30 a.m. and 6:47 a.m., same number, 559 area code, Fresno. One voicemail, left at 6:47 a.m. I sat on the edge of the bed and pressed play. "Marin, it's your mother." The voice hit my nervous system before my brain could process the words, not the content, the frequency, the specific vibration of a voice I hadn't heard in 18 years, but that my body had been storing in a locked room behind my ribs. The way bodies store the sounds that hurt them, not in the brain where you can reason with them, but in the tissue where they live, rent-free and wait. I know you probably don't want to hear from me. I know what I did. I've lived with it every day. But I'm sick, baby. I'm really sick. Stage 3 breast cancer. The doctors don't know how much time I have. I need to see you. I need to tell you what happened and why. Please call me back. I need you to forgive me before I die. Please, Marin, I'm your mother. I played it 3 times. The first time I listened to the words. The second time I listened for what was underneath the words. Remorse, manipulation, performance. The third time, I listened as a social worker because I am one, and social workers are trained to hear the request beneath the request. Her words said, "Forgive me." Her voice said, "Make me feel better about what I did so I can die in peace." My peace. Her peace. 2 different currencies, and she was asking me to exchange mine for hers at a rate that only benefited her. I went to work. I sat in my office at Bridge House. The photo of Helen, the photo of Joel, Senor Flop on the shelf. The window that looks out over a Portland street where people walk past carrying coffees and problems that don't involve bus stations. Danai Washington knocked on my door. My best friend, fellow social worker. We met in grad school and bonded over the specific exhaustion of women who chose a career that pays $61,000 to fix problems that cost $61 billion. "You okay? You look like you got hit by something invisible." My mother called. Danai sat down. She knows the story. Everyone at Bridge House knows the story because I use it. I tell foster kids, I was you. I was exactly where you're sitting. I was the kid on the bench with the broken backpack, and I'm standing here now. The story isn't a weapon. It's a bridge. But today, the bridge was on fire. I told Danai about the voicemail, the cancer, the 41 calls, the "forgive me before I die," the "I'm your mother." Danai listened. Then she said what Danai always says, which is the thing you need to hear delivered in the voice of a woman who doesn't believe in softening truth, because soft truth is just a comfortable lie. You don't owe her anything, Marin. Not forgiveness, not closure, not a phone call. You owe yourself the life you built. If calling her back would crack that foundation, the phone stays in your pocket. I called Helen. She picked up on the first ring. Helen always picks up on the first. Ring when it's me, because Helen Tsai decided 14 years ago that she would never make me wait for her, and she has kept that promise with the consistency of a woman who understands what waiting did to me. Helen, my mother, found me. Silence. 5 seconds. Then Helen's voice, steady and warm and clear. "What do you want to do?" "I don't know." "Then don't do anything yet. You've been making decisions alone since you were 9, Marin. You don't have to make this one alone. Come to dinner on Saturday. We'll talk. I'll make the lemon chicken." Then Yesenia texted, "My sister, the one who filmed my abandonment from the back seat of a car 18 years ago. I hadn't heard from her since. Marin, it's Yessie. Mom is dying. Please call her. She's been crying every day. She just wants to say sorry." I stared at the text. The sister who held up a flip phone and recorded the worst moment of my life was now asking me to comfort the woman who orchestrated it. Yesenia wasn't reaching out because she cared about me. She was reaching out because Lori's crying made the family uncomfortable. And the simplest way to stop the crying was to deliver the person Lori was crying about. I was being summoned not as a daughter, but as a remedy. An aspirin for a headache I didn't cause. I didn't respond. I called Joel. He answered from his workshop. I could hear the saw in the background. My mother called. 41 times. She has cancer. She wants forgiveness. Joel turned off the saw. The silence was total. "What do you need from me?" "I need you to tell me it's okay not to call her back." "It's okay not to call her back." I need you to also tell me it's okay if I do. It's also okay if you do. Whatever you choose, Marin, I'll be standing right next to you. Even if next to you is a diner in Fresno or a parking lot in Sacramento or a bench at a bus station, wherever you need to be, that's where I'll be. I made a decision. I would call Lori back. Not for her. For the 9-year-old girl on the bench who never got to ask why. That girl deserved an answer. And the 27-year-old woman she became was finally strong enough to hear it without breaking. I called from my office at Bridge House. Door closed. Danai outside. Joel on standby by text. Lori answered on the first ring. She'd been waiting. Of course she'd been waiting. Women who abandon their children and then find them 18 years later wait by the phone with the specific anxiety of a person who knows they don't deserve an answer and needs one anyway. Marin? Her voice was shaky. Baby, is that you? Don't call me baby. Silence. Then, okay, Marin, thank you for calling. I'm not calling for you. I'm calling for the 9-year-old you left at a Greyhound station with $5. She has questions. I'm going to ask them. You're going to answer. And when I'm done, I'll decide if I ever dial this number again. Lori agreed. What followed was the most important conversation of my life. Why did you leave me? Her answer came slowly, not because she didn't know the answer, because she knew it too well, and the truth, spoken out loud, was uglier than the version she'd been telling herself for 18 years. Ray, the boyfriend, the meth, she was using. She couldn't handle 3 kids and an addiction. Ray told her to choose. He didn't want 3. 2 was manageable. 3 was chaos. And Marin, the youngest, was too much. I asked questions. I talked back. I had a defiance that Ray couldn't handle because Ray was a man who required compliance from everyone in his radius, and a 9-year-old who asked why every time he gave an order was a threat to his control. You left me because a boyfriend you'd been dating for 4 months told you I was too much? I was sick, Marin. I was using. I wasn't in my right mind. You were in your right mind enough to drive a car, to pack their bags but not mine, to pick which child to keep and which one to leave on a sidewalk. That's not sickness, Mom. That's math. And I was on the wrong side of the equation. You were the strongest one. I knew you'd survive. I was 9. I didn't survive because I was strong. I survived because a Greyhound employee named Martin found me at 6 a.m. and called CPS. I survived because the system, the broken, overwhelmed, underfunded system, caught me before the street did. I survived because 4 years later a woman named Helen took me in and did what you were supposed to do. I didn't survive because of anything you gave me. I survived in spite of everything you took. Silence. Long. The kind of silence that happens when truth has entered a room and there's no furniture to hide behind. Nico laughed, I said. Did you know that? He turned around in the front seat and laughed when you drove away. He was a child. So was I. And Yesenia filmed it. She held up a phone and recorded her sister being abandoned, and you drove away with both of them. You kept them. You left me. Not because I was the weakest, because I was the one your boyfriend didn't want. I was the extra one. The third kid that was one too many for a man who was one too many himself. She was crying now. I wasn't. What do you want from me, Marin? I want you to say it. Not, I'm sorry. I know you're sorry. Sorry is cheap. Sorry costs nothing. I want you to say what you did, in your own words, without the addiction excuse, without the, I wasn't in my right mind. Say the truth. Silence. Then slowly, breaking, I abandoned my 9-year-old daughter at a bus station because my boyfriend didn't want 3 kids, and I chose him over her. I told her to find her own way home because I was too weak and too selfish to drive her there, and I never came back. I sat with it, the words in the air, the truth finally, in the same voice that had told me the lie. Thank you, I said. Does that mean you forgive me? No, it means I heard you. Forgiveness isn't a transaction, Mom. You don't get to call after 18 years and order absolution like takeout. Forgiveness is something I'll decide on my own timeline. Not yours, not your God's, mine. I'm dying, Marin. I know, and I'm genuinely sorry, but your timeline doesn't create a deadline for my healing. I've been healing for 18 years without you. I'll continue with or without your participation. Can I at least see you? Once? I looked at Helen's photo on my desk. Joel's photo. Senor Flop. I'll think about it. That's all I'm asking. No, it's not. You're asking for forgiveness. You're asking for closure. You're asking for your daughter to make you feel okay about what you did so you can die in peace. But my peace matters too, and I'm not going to sacrifice mine for yours. I hung up. She said she left me because I was the strong one, the one who could survive it. She chose which of her children to discard based on which one she thought could take the hit. I was 9 years old and my mother looked at me and saw someone tough enough to throw away. That's not a compliment. That's a life sentence. Because every day since, I've had to be tough. I didn't get to be soft. I didn't get to be the kid who cried for her mother. I had to be the kid who proved she didn't need one. If someone in your life ever hurt you because they knew you could handle it, I need you to understand something. That's not love. That's selection. That's a person choosing who to damage based on who they think won't break. And the fact that you didn't break doesn't mean what they did was okay. It means what you did was extraordinary. 1 month later, November, I flew to Fresno, alone. Joel offered to come. Helen offered to come. I said no. I need to do this the way I did the bus station, alone, so I know I can. I rented a car. I drove to the medical clinic where Lori works as an administrative assistant. I didn't go inside. I sat in the parking lot for 45 minutes, watching the door, processing the fact that my mother works at a medical clinic and lives in a small apartment in Fresno and drives a 2009 Toyota Camry and has been sober for 14 years and found religion and rebuilt her life on the same foundation I rebuilt mine on. Nothing. Except she had a choice and I didn't. She chose to destroy and then rebuild. I was destroyed and then had to rebuild. The architecture looks similar from the outside. The blueprints are completely different. Lori walked out at 5:15 p.m. She was thinner than I expected. She wore a scarf over her head, chemo. She moved slowly. She looked small. Not the towering figure from my childhood memory, the figure that could fill a car with silence and a sentence with finality. A small woman in a parking lot in Fresno who was sick and shrinking and afraid. I got out of the car. Lori saw me. Stopped. The distance between us was 30 feet and 18 years. Marin. Mom. We didn't hug. We stood in a parking lot in Fresno in the November dusk and looked at each other the way two people look at each other across a wound that one of them caused and the other one survived. We went to a diner, Lori's Choice, cheap, familiar. Vinyl booths and laminated menus and coffee that comes before you ask for it because the waitress has been doing this for 20 years and knows that people who sit down in diners at 5:30 p.m. on a weekday need caffeine before they need conversation. Lori talked about the meth, about Ray, who left her in 2008 and died of an overdose in 2015 and was therefore never held accountable for the role he played in my abandonment because death is the ultimate avoidance of consequences, about getting sober in 2010, about the years of minimum wage, about finding religion at a storefront church in Fresno where a pastor named Reverend Gloria told her that God forgives even the unforgivable, about the cancer, stage 3, chemo every 3 weeks, hair gone, weight gone, energy gone, fighting. I listened. I listened the way I listened to clients at Bridge House, with professional empathy and controlled distance. I did not let her pain override mine. Her cancer was real. Her regret might be real. But real regret and real cancer don't retroactively undo a real bus station and a real bench and a real 9-year-old sleeping alone. Then I talked about the bench, the foster homes, the Hendersons, the Pratts, the group home in Elk Grove, Helen, Portland State, Joel, Bridge House, Senor Flop still on my bookshelf with his safety pin ear. Lori listened. She cried quietly into a paper napkin. At one point she said, "You did all that without me?" "I did all that because of you. Not because you helped, because you left. Every degree, every job, every morning I wake up and go to work and help kids who are in the system you put me in, I do it on the foundation of proving I didn't need the woman who left me. You didn't make me strong by leaving. You made me strong by making strength the only option." I asked about Nico. He lives in Fresno, works at an auto body shop. DU is minor drug charges, instability. Lori said he's working on himself. I said nothing because I work with broken systems every day, and I know that working on himself is what families say when the work hasn't started, and they need a phrase that sounds like progress. I asked about Yesenia. 2 kids. Bakersfield. Married. The good one in the family story. But Yesenia hasn't reached out to me in 18 years. Not once. Until Lori's crying made her uncomfortable enough to send a text that was really about Lori's comfort, not mine. Yes, he sent me a text asking me to call you. She said you've been crying every day. I have. She didn't reach out because she cares about me, Mom. She reached out because your crying makes her uncomfortable, the same way my presence in the car made her uncomfortable 18 years ago. She filmed me being abandoned. She held up a phone and recorded the worst moment of my life. And then she went home and ate dinner. Lori had no response because there is no response to that. The diner dinner ended. We stood in the parking lot. Same configuration, 30 feet, 18 years. Am I going to see you again? Lori asked. I don't know. I understand. No, you don't, but that's okay. Understanding isn't a requirement for me to heal. I'm going to get in this car and drive to the airport and fly home to Portland and hug my husband and go to work on Monday and help kids who are in the system you put me in. And I'm going to do that whether you understand or not. I love you, Marin. I didn't say it back, not because I feel nothing. I feel something enormous and complicated and unresolved that doesn't have a name. But saying it would feel like a transaction. And I've spent 18 years refusing to let love be something people trade for absolution. Take care of yourself, Mom. Fight the cancer. I got in the car. I drove away. In the rearview mirror, my mother was standing in the parking lot, small, shrinking. The reverse image of a 9-year-old watching taillights disappear. I pulled over a mile down the road. I gripped the steering wheel, and I cried. Not the controlled tears of a social worker, not the measured tears of a woman who spent 18 years building armor, the tears of a 9-year-old girl who slept on a metal bench with a stuffed rabbit and $4.25 in coins, and never, not once, not in 9 years, of foster homes and fluorescent-lit intake. Rooms and garbage bags instead of suitcases allowed herself to fully cry about the thing that started all of it. I cried for 20 minutes on the shoulder of a road in Fresno, California. Then I wiped my face. I started the car. I drove to the airport. I flew home to Portland. I walked through my front door. Joel was on the couch. He stood up. He didn't ask what happened. He just opened his arms. And I walked into them the way you walk into the place you were looking for when you were 9 years old with a bus map that didn't help because home wasn't on it. Home was here. Home was always going to be here. I just had to survive long enough to find it. 6 months later, April 2025, Portland. Therapy twice a week for 4 months after the Fresno visit. Processing the bus station, processing the phone call, processing the diner, processing the specific grief of a woman who was abandoned because she was too much and spent 18 years trying to be exactly enough. Helen came to Portland for Thanksgiving. She brought pumpkin pie and a new safety pin for Senior Flop because the old one was rusting. That rabbit has held up better than most marriages, she said, attaching the pin. Another 30 years, easy. Joel built a new bookshelf for the apartment. On the top shelf, he put a small frame. Inside the frame, a $5 bill. Not the original. That one went to a granola bar and a bus map and a bench in Sacramento in 2006. A new one. Framed. With a handwritten note underneath in Joel's carpenter's handwriting. She found her way home. I saw it when I came home from work. I stood in the hallway looking at it for a long time. You're going to make me cry, I said. Good, you don't cry enough. I cried in Fresno. That was 6 months ago. You're due. Lori. I called her once more. February 2025. Not a long call. 10 minutes. How's the chemo? Hard, but I'm fighting. Good. Keep fighting. Marin? Yeah? Thank you for coming to Fresno. I didn't come for you. I know, but you came. That's more than I deserved. Yes, it was. Silence. Then, I love you. I didn't say it back. The complicated thing in my chest moved but didn't speak. It's not ready. It might never be ready, but the door isn't closed. It's where I left it, slightly open on my terms, on my timeline. Not Lori's, not God's, not Yesenia's uncomfortable with crying timeline. Mine. Take care of yourself, Mom. Nico never called. Yesenia never texted again. The family that left me at a bus station returned to its original shape, a triangle with a missing corner that they'd learned to walk around instead of fix. And me, the missing corner. I built my own shape. A life in Portland, a husband who framed a $5 bill, a foster mother who replaced a safety pin, a career that takes the worst thing that happened to me and turns it into the best thing I do for other people. Sunday morning, April. Portland, the apartment balcony, coffee. The Portland spring is doing what it does, raining softly on everything green, which is everything, because Portland is a city that runs on rain and coffee and the quiet stubbornness of people who refuse to carry umbrellas on principle. I'm holding my coffee. Joel is beside me. Through the sliding glass door, I can see the bookshelf, the framed $5 bill, Senor Flop with his new safety pin, the photo of Helen, the life I built, visible through glass, real and warm and mine. Joel? Yeah? Do you think I should see her again? Do you want to? Part of me does. Part of me thinks seeing her again is giving her something she didn't earn. What would Helen say? I think about it. I smile. Small. The smile of a woman who has two mothers, one who left her and one who found her, and knows which one's opinion she's going to take. Helen would say, "You are not what happened to you. You are what you do with what happened to you." And then she'd make lemon chicken and change the subject. Smart woman. The smartest. We sit. The rain falls. The coffee's warm. And somewhere in Fresno, a woman is fighting cancer and waiting for a phone call that may or may not come. And somewhere in Portland, her daughter is sitting on a balcony with a man who framed a $5 bill and a rabbit with a safety pin ear, and she's not waiting for anything. She's not running from anything. She's not trying to find her way home. She's here, present, whole, built from a bench and a granola. Bar and $4.25 in coins and 4 foster homes, and one woman named Helen and one man named Joel, and the specific, extraordinary stubbornness of a 9-year-old girl who was told to find her way home and spent 18 years doing exactly that. She found it. Not a building, not a city, not a person. Home is the moment you stop surviving and start choosing. And this morning, on a balcony in Portland, with the rain falling and the coffee warm and the man beside her and the rabbit on the shelf, Marin Calloway is choosing. She's choosing to be here. That's enough. That's more than enough. What did you do with your $5? Not literally. The metaphor. What's the smallest thing someone ever left you with? The scraps? The nothing? The figure it out yourself? And what did you build from it? Tell me. Not the polished version, the real one, the bench version, the version that still has a safety pin holding it together. I want to hear it, because the people who build lives from nothing don't get enough credit. They don't get trophies. They get Tuesday mornings and coffee and the quiet knowledge that everything they have, they built. Tell me what you built in the comments, out loud. It deserves to be heard. And if you know a kid right now who's on a bench somewhere, literal or metaphorical, who's been told to figure it out by the people who were supposed to carry them, reach out. Not with money, with presence. With the sentence Helen Tsai said to a 14-year-old girl in Sacramento that changed everything, "You are not what happened to you." Say that to someone who needs to hear it, tonight, right now, because those 7 words are worth more than $5. They're worth a whole life. I'll see you in the next one.